Today I'm expanding my Necron Flayer Court and I'm gonna make a Cardinal or a Bishop. I'm gonna take this Chronomancer and kitbash him with this abhorrent Cardinal from the Flesh Eater Courts from Age of Sigmar. Because this is part of my Flayer Court. It's where I create Necron characters, models like courtiers and so on and so forth, and make them go a little bit insane. Make them start wearing human skin cloaks and all kinds of human little attire. And I've already done a judge with his Executioner and Emotech the Vermin Flayer. I'll show some pics over here. And maybe one day I'll work up towards the Silent King. It would be cool to make a whole court of Flayer characters together on the throne of the Silent King, sort of floating into battle, harvesting Necrons, humans, anything they can get their hands on. But I don't just want to slap a little skin cloak on a Necron model and call it a Flayer Necron. That's a little bit too simple. I'm going to replace some body parts as well, because I want to maybe give the impression that they've been working on some biotransference, you know, getting themselves back into fleshy bodies, and something's going horribly wrong. And so now they're replacing body parts with flesh, or flesh parts back to metal. They're hunting Necrons that are still fully Necrons, and it's just all going awfully wrong. And I want to make little monsters out of them. So I'm just going to give him this sort of fleshy cloak that the bishop comes with, and a proper bishop's head with that nice mitre that he has. And then I'm going to go work on some body parts. I'm just going to replace this forearm that he has. It's where the Chronomancer holds this cube. And I got a sort of similar arm here from the bishop, from the cardinal, from the Flesh Eater Courts. And I think I can just stick it in here, sort of hide it with that flesh cloak that I'm working on, and still make him, give him that same pose as the Chronomancer. There, like that. I think it works out pretty well. I put a little bit of green stuff on there. It still needs to cure, and then I can add some nice bits and pieces like he has here on the front. There's bones and bits hanging there. I want to add some Necron bits, some arms, some skulls, and so on and so forth. But I gotta put this away for a bit, let it dry, and I'm gonna work on the staff. And I quite like this idea from the Cardinal, and I'm gonna see if I can make something like that, but then Necron style. And so I'm gonna take one of these bodies. It's from one of those transport barges that the Necrons have, and it's perfect because I don't have to fiddle with cutting off the lower part. It's just the upper torso already. And then I think I can just stick him here onto these prongs of the staff, sort of jam him in there in between, and with a little bit of sprue goo I can make it work. And the Cardinal has these sort of rays of sunshine coming from behind the corpse, and I want to do that with my Necron as well. So I got some of these arms over here from all kinds of guns and so on and so forth. I'm just going to see if I can stick them here on his back and make him stand out like rays of sunshine around the body. Yeah, there, like a weird little folded up Necron on top of his staff. And I stuck an extra arm over there because he had this skin cloak that is sort of going up because, you know, the Flesh Eater Courts character is holding his staff a bit higher. And this solves the problem right away as well. It makes it look like maybe he has a second arm, maybe it's the arm of the Necron that's on top of the staff, who knows. Now all I've got to do is put on his head and some more trophies. But I'm going to improve the staff a little bit more first. I want to use this thin wire to tie some of these bits that are loose from the Necron body to the staff. Just give it the impression that really things are going wrong and they're sort of tying bits of Necron to their staff, to themselves, and also to collect them as trophies. There, all bound up, and I think it would be really funny to paint him as if he's still alive, but awake, like a Necron is awake. So he's just going to be stuck there on that staff for all eternity, being carried around by this Cardinal, because if you hack off a Necron's limbs, he's still going to be okay. Now, he needs some trophies over there, otherwise this cloak is a little bit too boring on this side, and I've got a few bits and pieces here. I got an arm, I got his very own spine, which might be his own. Maybe he's just, when he replaces bits, he taxes all the bits onto himself, sort of as a spare or to just carry around, or as a way to show off how many parts of himself he has already replaced. And I got a couple of these basic Necron heads, and I'm just going to stick them on there and hang them up there like trophies. There they are, and then it's time to paint, and I'm going to do the Necron parts first, and I can just dry brush those, and I'm going to keep them very dark, because the main focus of this miniature is of course going to be the skin cloaks and the fleshy bits and the nastiness and the gore and so on. So I want to make the metal bits dark so that the fleshy bits stand out a little bit more. So a little bit of Iron Warriors and some silver for the highlights, especially the still living Necron on top. And then for the skin parts, I'm gonna do lots of stippling and lots of very rough work to get a really mottled look. So first, a little bit of Bugman glow, and I'm trying not to hit all of these trophies that he has, but if I do hit them, well, so be it. This is just gonna be way faster than trying to do everything neatly and perfectly. I've stippled in some Ruckert flesh just for variety and a little bit of a highlight, and now it's time for some Cadian flesh tone. But there's one thing I wanna do. I wanna make sure that he looks like a cardinal, so he needs to be dressed in red. So this is going to be a pretty bloody and gory bit of skin, and I'm going to stay away from the Flayed one flesh tones, those light yellows, the more desaturated tones, and I want to make it look really, really red. Yeah, that looks good. Now just a couple of washes to set these different bits of skin apart, because you might not see it, but he has this sort of necklace of bones that are hanging off a separate strip of skin. And I want to give that a slightly different tint to just show that this skin is not all coming from one place. There's multiple victims involved here. And especially his head, it's going to be a little bit more red. And then he has this sort of central strip. I'm going to lighten that a little bit. And for that, I am going to use some of those lighter skin tones like Flayed one flesh and Ruckert flesh. And then I'll wash it with some Seraphim sepia. And again, I'm stippling rather than just washing the whole model, because that will make it look more worn and mottled and varied. Now this is fine, it needs a little bit of drying. I'm first going to clean up these little metal bits here, because I hit them with the paint, of course. When you stipple, that's what happens. But then it's time for some enamels and to add some nasty gore effects. First, some Carrion Crimson from Villainy Inks. Bright red and sort of bloody looking and gritty. There's lots of pigment in there, so it's perfect for blood effects. And then a little mix with Ichor of the Damned to make it darker, just around the edges. Make it look like something's been coagulating there already. His own skin, that of this monster, gets a little layer of decrepit filth. And I'm going to reduce it after this. It's just to get some darkness in the recesses. But I want to make it look like the skin, the flesh, it's not really alive. But somehow it's still active. I think he's coming along nicely. I still need to do a little bit of work on the face. It's a little bit too smushed and not clearly defined, but it's getting there. The arm is good. It's time to make that Necron on his staff alive, because like I said, I think it would be a funny story to have a live Necron on top of this staff. And how do you make a Necron come alive? Well, you just turn on the lights with some white and some Tesseract glow and a little bit of overspray or, OSL to make it really glow. There, now he's more alive, and I gave the Flayer Cardinal a little bit of a red glow. There's these two slots over there, just some Magma Dwarf Flame contrast paint to sort of show that there's something going wrong with the crazy guys, and then there's normal Necrons around that still look green. But I've been working on this guy for 2 days now, and I kind of feel he's missing Chronomancer identifiers. Let's put it like that. The Chronomancer, they always have these cubes, the ones that are circling above his head, and he usually has one in his hand, depending on how you make the model. And I feel that he's missing this. He doesn't have any of these cubes. So I'm going to go and add one really quickly. And I'm going to take this one over here. That's the one he's holding in his hand. I just have to finish it with little bits and pieces. And I got to scrape off one of his fingers because it's attached to his hand. Now it comes with these holes on both sides. And you're supposed to glue these little cubes in there, the squares. But I'm just going to drill straight through it, because I think it would be nicer to make it look like some kind of pendant that he's holding onto. He still has that arm holding something up. Why not just hang it off there? And the way I'm going to hang it off his arm is using some of this wire here. That's just twisted wire around another wire. So I have 0.5 millimeter wire here. I just twist it around another one. And then I can hang it off his arm something like this. I just got to paint it real quick. Inspired by the box art. A little bit of sea green. This sort of teal greenish color. And then with a bit of super glue, I hang it here on his wrist. Now, is that cube still working? Does he know how it works? Does he know what he needs to do with it? I don't know, he looks pretty insane, but at least he knows that he should be carrying these cubes with him. Now it's time for a very quick desert base with some sandy desert paste, a little bit of a wash, and a bit of pigment powder, and my Chrono Cardinal is done. And I'm quite happy with how he turned out. The red robe, red skin, I should say, is a nice touch because it sets him apart from the other guys. And the Necron on top of his staff. It mimics that idea of the staff of the Flesh-Eater Court's Cardinal, but then with a Necron alive. The lights are on, he's gonna get carried around for all eternity. As long as he's alive, as long as the Cardinal is alive, he's gonna be carried on top of that staff. I'm also really quite happy with the cube I added in the end, because it brings back the little aspect of the Chronomancer. It makes it a little bit clearer what he was at some point before he got twisted and turned. Now I think I am going to work up towards a Silent King diorama, but I'm going to need a few more characters first. Something like a Well, an oracle makes sense, but also something of a treasurer, somebody to look after the artifacts and the griblies and I don't know, what kind of money would a Flayer King, Necron Flayer King have? What would he consider money? Maybe bones or something. I don't know. I'll figure it out. Now, massive shout out to my patrons and channel members. You guys rock. Thank you so much for the support. Join the Discord. We're having lots of fun in there. And maybe check out one of these videos next.